Warren East sounds pretty comfortable. Do you think others will be feeling as comfortable? Metals markets certainly are pricing in really what is a very strong energy market, and the impact on the metals is quite clear. Is there more to come?
The energy crisis is certainly bleeding into other parts of the commodity market, and that's what we would expect to happen. The individual impact for companies really depends on their hedging strategies. Someone like Rolls-Royce says, that they've got some runway there, but there will be other, end users of energy, but also metals where the impact will be felt more acutely and more quickly.
For the metals market, is the price signal doing the cyclical thing? As in with oil, producers are not responding to the high prices. Are metal producers responding to the high prices?
The problem we have in lots of commodity markets, but particularly in metals, is there's such a long lead time. So high prices now don't directly relate to a new copper mine tomorrow. In the case of copper, actually, you could be looking at a 10-year timeline. So it's very difficult to immediately match supply and demand. We do expect, and there are forecasts for metal supply across most of the major metals to increase over the next 12 months or so, but there still could be, additional breaks in the supply chain, ongoing issues with energy, which look pretty likely, that could sort of disrupt that new supply.
It's interesting because the German economy was downgraded today by the economic institutes in Germany for this year, their forecast on supply chain issues. Now, that's just not metals, but Germany is a metal-bashing industrial country, and it is certainly seeing shortages. The expectation was that some of those supply chain issues are going to fade next year. What is your outlook? What do you think is going to happen in terms of pricing? You talk about the fact that it takes years to bring on new supply. Is industry just going to have to learn to live with these higher prices?
We've seen these types of moves in commodity markets are things that we, rightly or wrongly, see quite regularly. So, we know that there will be a price at which demand starts to be adjusted downwards, and we're seeing that to some extent already. We will expect at some point to see improvement in these supply chains, although it's difficult to say, how long that will take. Mm-hmm. So we know that markets will adjust. We know that there'll be new technologies to use. We know that we're pretty good at fixing, high prices. It's just a matter of how long it takes.
Right. Is there one commodity that's different? I always hate to say that, but one that can't ramp up supply even if you're looking at a decade, or one where the demand is just so strong?
I think the crude oil market is a really interesting one to look at if you've got a very long-term view, because as we move through the energy transition, we're already seeing that long-term, capital that's being put into that market is falling. And so while we're not necessarily going to run out of crude oil, and that's, almost certainly not going to happen, our ability to access it quickly could change as we move towards the use of other energy sources, and that's where we put our capital.
But this is the problem, is that we're facing a supply shortage. We've got an energy problem, and we're going to get huge demand. If we want to electrify the world in the way that we're talking about with the 2050 goals, then we're going to need a lot of copper. We're going to need aluminium if we can't get the copper. To Alex's point about substitution, how much substitution is possible if demand remains elevated, because there is a political and environmental imperative to move from where we are now with hydrocarbons into a more electrified world?
I think we all knew that the sort of energy transition would be, it would take some time, that there'd be bumps along the road. I think the problem we're seeing now is that maybe we didn't anticipate the size of those bumps or the duration of those bumps. But we would expect that technology and human ingenuity will save us. It's just a matter of how long we have to deal with the current situation that we have, which is pretty unpleasant if you're an energy-intensive industry such as the metals industry is.